My guest today is bringing dance out of the studio and into the streets of Queens. Karesia is a dancer and executive founding director of Queensboro Dance Festival. Hi, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so exciting.
I'm excited to have you. First, for the people that don't know, what is Queensboro Dance Festival?
So, Queensboro Dance Festival is a nonprofit organization that I founded as a dancer myself 13 years ago now. And we are a program now that tours the entire borough of Queens. And we activate different public spaces, so parks, plazas, and streets, presenting only Queens-based dance companies to represent the unique diversity of our borough. And we also provide artist services for Queens dancers, like tailored to Queens dancers. So that includes free and discounted rehearsal space, physical therapy sessions, professional development workshops, things that each season we've learned what the dancers' needs are, and we're able to deliver these types of services directly to them through our wonderful variety of partnerships.
That is incredible because I didn't know a lot of those services you deliver. And I met you probably 13 years ago when you
Probably, yes.
started. I'm very excited in what direction the festival grew. But when you started, what was the reason? And tell me a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I started the festival because I was a dancer in New York City, living in Queens, pursuing the, regular hustle and grind of trying to make it as a freelance performer. And as I was navigating the different resources that are available to dancers to find out where to audition and where to take class and where to rehearse and where to see shows, a lot of the information that was being provided was not really showing anything that's happening in Queens. It was basically telling us that we need to go to downtown Manhattan, uptown Manhattan, we need to go to the Bronx, we need to go to Brooklyn in order to find any sense of dance community or to be able to pursue any type of viable dance career. And I just felt that there was something missing there, and living in Queens, we are the biggest borough, we're the most diverse borough, and I just kept thinking to myself, there's got to be other dancers out here that are wondering the same thing. There's got to be resources out here that we just don't know how to access. So I started the festival really to just get a lay of the land of who else was out here and what's everybody working on and what are the types of dance that people are practicing and where does everyone rehearse here and where does everybody perform and teach. And so that's really been the main driving force, this curiosity and this desire to have a community here, and also to have a platform to make Queens dance more visible, especially compared to the dance scenes that we see in other boroughs.
So, what did you do? You went out, you contacted dancers,
Yes,
or
it was
walk me through the process?
Yes, yes, quite literally was out walking around in neighborhoods, knocking on doors, peeking into events, looking up places where I can go, even houses of worship and cultural centers, anything that I could find, I would go in and inquire if, there was a dance company here, or what is this event about, or how did you find this artist, or how did you find this space, or where do you guys rehearse? And very much a grassroots, knocking on doors, neighborhood effort, traveling everywhere, just discovering where everyone was creating.
So then what did you do? In what shape and form looked the first festival? And
Yes.
why did you call it a festival?
Yes. So at the time I lived in Long Island City on 21st Street. And when I thought of this idea, I wrote it down on paper, and down the street from me just so happened to be, at the time, the Secret Theater. And I walked into that theater and I asked for a meeting. I presented this idea on paper. And Richard Mazda, the executive director, also a founder of the Secret Theater, was the first to give us a shot and was like, okay, you can try this out in our space. And it started as a 4-night run. We found 12, I think it was 12 or 18 Queens-based dance groups after putting out a wide call inside of Queens Theater, and we paid back the rent of the space from the ticket sales. And after that, I realized, if we're really going to represent the diversity of Queens, and this is really about visibility and also access, because we wanted to also better cultivate a Queens audience, so that the type of programming that's here already existing should feel relevant to the broader public in this borough, not just patrons of the arts and not just people who are already dancers or love dance, really something that is accessible to everyone. So I realized that this program needs to be borough-wide. We need to travel, and if we're going to represent borough-wide and be as accessible as possible, we need to be outside. We need to be free, unticketed, which meant we should be really targeting an outdoor public space. So that's the evolution of the
I
program.
love this.
It is.
I love this because I mentioned in another show, I was standing on a line in the pharmacy, and I don't know, I was swaying side to side, and older lady behind said, "Were you a dancer?" And I said, "Yes." And so she said, "I live in Queens, and I'm older now." I think she was in her 80s. And she said, "My biggest issue is that I cannot go and watch performances because they're so far. I have to take the train or drive."
Yeah.
If it's in Queens, where would you go? You go to the Queens Theater, Queens Museum if they have performances, or Queens College. I'm sure there are other spaces too.
Right.
But you go to Manhattan. And for older people, that's a problem.
Yes,
And-
we were super proud of the idea that we come directly to the communities. We meet the different communities in the borough where they are, so that oftentimes neighbors will just stumble upon us because we are in their public space. So that's been something that has been really meaningful to us, that we can be accessible to that extent, and people can follow us without having to go very far, or they can just discover us by accident and stay and enjoy the program.
I love it. So was there a moment that you realized, okay, it's not only about dance, it's also about community and contribution? Was there any specific moment?
So many moments that have just compiled in my heart as like little memories that have reinforced this idea that it is so much more than dance or art for art's sake, which definitely has its own value and importance for sure. But as we've gone along through the program over the years, and we see on site when we're at different parks and different neighborhoods, and we see dancers connecting with one another, there's a lot of cultural exchange and dialogue happening. When we see audiences interact with dancers, because in public space it is a very equal, open environment. So there's no fourth wall, there's no elitism, there's no backstage, or we encourage everyone to talk to one another because our common thread is that we're all Queens-based. So when we see these connections happening, and we see what also happens where you're strengthening bonds, you're connecting people within that own neighborhood, and they're getting to learn more about their own neighborhood through our program just because we're there as a gathering place, or they're appreciating or enjoying their public space more because they happen to stumble upon us, and it wouldn't have been a time that they would have stopped. That's when we really started realizing that dance has become the mechanism in which we are able to connect with one another and help strengthen communities, and also connect the borough as a whole, so that there's this overall broader awareness of the borough and all the diversity that it has to offer through the lens of dance.
And you served in the community board. Was that any influence, or does that help you in any way to run the festival, or to pinpoint the pain points, really, of the borough?
It's serving on community board, and it's been, I think, 8 years now. I serve on Community Board 2, which represents Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, and a little bit of Maspeth. I chair the Arts and Culture Committee there, and I also serve on the Land Use Committee. And it has definitely brought in awareness to the power of advocacy and the power of people, especially through arts and culture, really learning how we can help amplify the really true idea that arts and culture is integrated in so many other critical components of a vibrant community. It's public safety, it's education, it's physical and mental wellness, and it's beyond arts and culture. And that's something I think through my service on Arts and Culture Committee and also through my service on land use, we also see a very close relationship between how land use and development happens in our borough, particular to my neighborhood, and how that affects arts and culture, and how the two has a huge opportunity to better synergize as opposed to what typically happens when development comes around.
And going a little bit back, I remember interviewing a few dancers and art organizations, and they were saying the biggest issue and the biggest challenge is finding rehearsal space. When you run the festival, do you have a space to rehearse, or the dancers rehearse on their own?
Yeah, so it's interesting because our artists, they're from everywhere in the borough. So we learn from each other. We find out where they typically rehearse, whatever is accessible to them. So oftentimes we see that dance companies are forging their own partnerships very local to their neighborhood. So whether they have a connection to their house of worship or their local community center, or if there happens to be a dance studio or even a yoga studio in their neighborhood that they've been able to carve out rehearsal space there. That's one way that we're learning that artists are finding space. For us, the way that we try to continue to fill that need is forging partnerships with studios that we know and also institutions like our CIGs here in Queens, including JCAL, the Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning, Queens Theater. We try to make those spaces accessible to our Queens dance participants as well by being able to offer them, free or discounted space through participating with our program, as well as local dance studios that we have partnerships with as well.
It sounds like a lot. How do you balance it all? Because I'm assuming all these collaborations and partnerships, it takes a lot of time on the phone, networking, talking to
Yes.
people.
Yes.
How do you do it? And you're a mom.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I sometimes I don't really know. It is just sheer. I just feel just so strongly about needing to deliver these types of services to dancers because I know what it feels like. We hear the needs all the time. So if we can fill the gap as quickly as we can, I will go out there and make those partnerships. And luckily, we've gotten so much support from so many sectors in the borough. And as the years go by, our relationships get stronger and we can go out and get more partnerships as we need them. But yes, it's a lot of networking, but it's all worth it.
And you mentioned that we need more investment in the arts and culture in general. What would that actually look like?
Yes. So lately I've really been thinking of arts as infrastructure. And I think that's also what the public and private sectors need to think of when they think of how to support arts and culture. It is an infrastructural element to our communities and to our systems and to our city agencies even. So what that looks like to me is, I mean, it's very easy to say, everybody always needs more funding, right? But if we really think about how the entire ecosystem works, and we have to think about de-siloing arts and culture so that it is no longer thought of as this isolated optional thing. It is not, and it can't be funded that way. That's not a sustainable way to keep arts and culture in a community. But it's really thinking about how can, how does arts and culture serve in the medical field? How does arts and culture serve in our schools and in our public spaces? So if we think of ways to better integrate, whether it's through programming, and we can figure out how to share these buckets of funding, I think we would have a much easier way of sustaining all the arts and culture that exists here.
And if it doesn't happen, what do you think we risk as a community and as a society?
Yes.
Really?
I brought up this point not too long ago when I spoke at the Center for Urban Futures panel. We are risking losing representation, and when we risk losing representation and visibility, then we're losing our voice in our communities, right? So, and it sometimes to me that strikes me as a little bit political, right? Like in the sense of, if we don't have representation, then we don't have a voice in politics. It's very similar to arts and culture, because there's so many cultures here that are underrepresented and that often don't get a seat at the table. As we all know, Queens is over half immigrant population, and so many languages are spoken here, and there needs to be, and there can be, space for everyone to be acknowledged and celebrated and recognized. So when an opportunity is taken away to have a platform, to have these cultures seen and as a means of connecting communities, as a means of having an identity when you're in your neighborhoods, it's a loss of identity and visibility, and it is also a loss of all of the other infrastructural things that intersects with arts and culture. So we can't, it's a loss in learning, in cultural exchange. It's a missed opportunity in stewarding our public spaces and enjoying our public spaces, and as an opportunity to help put forth like physical and mental wellness, and it will just overall weaken the bonds in neighborhoods, I believe.
And besides funding and rehearsal spaces, what were the biggest challenges for these 13 years that continue?
Besides funding and space, I think advocacy is really paramount this year. There's a lot of shifts in our government locally. We're constantly dealing with challenges federally. And so this is a huge, not just an opportunity, but also an urgency that we need to harness our voice as an arts and culture unified sector, especially in Queens now, because while we're at the top of this new mayoral administration, and while there's all these shifts in commissioners and city council members, we really have to harness our voice and our messaging so that our local government can best support the sector here that is a huge economic driver in our city, and needs to be sustained, especially since the city benefits economically so much from our arts workers.
That's great. And I forgot my question, sorry. What gives you hope for the future?
Oh, well, this is going to sound really cheesy because I'm a fairly new mom, but it's really been clear to me that it is our next generation of dancers that can hold the hope to bring our sector into our next stage of evolution. Now I know when, you know, everyone that has preceded me that has always talked about, investing in our youth and, supporting our children. And I never really quite knew what that meant until now. But it's so true. It's so true. We need to pass these things down to the next wave of dancers, to the next generation, so that they understand, especially in arts and culture, where so much is passed down through culture bearing and storytelling and oral history and dance history, where, for example, I'm Filipino and I learned Filipino dances just from my family and my community. It was nothing that was formally studied. And that is something that I am now passing down to my children organically because of the nature of my job, but it's also a source of pride and an accessible way for my kids to start learning about part of their heritage. So, yes, I think about this a lot and how our program can impact the youth in our communities.
And speaking of future, what is this year festival look like? When is it going to be? Where? I know it's everywhere, but
this year is going to be a slightly different year. I mean, every year we tweak things a little bit, but it's a World Cup year. There's a lot of buzz around World Cup, especially in Queens. So we are planning on doing some watch parties where we'll be able to host an actual outdoor screening, but we're going to have some very well curated dance programming that is complementing whatever teams will be at that stage of the World Cup tournament. So that's new in particular to this year. We are having our annual Dancing with the Queen Stars Gala in the spring instead of the fall. So it's actually opening our season this year, which I think is an exciting shift. And that is an event in itself where it's a community dance competition that also serves as our annual fundraiser because the majority of our programming is free to the public. And we also participated in a program this year. We were selected. We were one of 5 nonprofit organizations that was selected to work with a team to create a PSA campaign around the benefits of dance and arts and culture in public space. So we're very excited for that. We are launching that campaign next month, and then we'll do another more public reveal at the gala, actually, and that'll run throughout our entire season. So we run May 30th through August 15th this year.
Great.
It'll be about 30 events.
And my last question, I always ask the same question all my guests. If someone is new to Queens and wants to experience culture, where would you send them? Besides Queensboro Dance Festival.
Everybody knows Queens as like the place to eat food, right? So that's a very easy thing. Along those lines, Queens Night Market is so great. Shout out to John Wang for being an amazing partner for that. The other cultural festivals that are so unique to our borough, like the Dragon Boat races, is a really interesting one. Momo Crawl in Jackson Heights. Trying to find like the beaten path experiences to come to Queens, and of course our waterfront is lovely, and our beaches in Rockaway.
Queens is great.
Yeah.
Queens
has everything.
I'm Jackson Heights local, so
yes,
I'm very biased.
So much love for Jackson Heights. That's actually where we kick off our festival every year.
Oh,
right
great.
in 34th Avenue or Paseo Park and Travers Park.
Yes, that's where we filmed that last year.
Yes, we'll be there.
Well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for
I enjoyed
having
our
me.
conversation.
Yes, and thank you for your support over all the years. It's meant so much, and we're just so honored that QPTV helps elevate our message to the public. So thank you.
Of course. This is for today's show. I'll see you next time on Around Queens.